Thanks, Mike. So it's my job now to tell you about some of the tools that we've got. And just to make sure that I have enough time, I'll just get right into it. I'm going to be talking about 4 to 5 tools here and trying to demonstrate one live. So hopefully we'll see if that all works. Now, one of the key things to remember here is that when we look at these tools, we're always looking at water conservation, water management, but we came up with a couple of figures. It's not just always about water, it's also about power, energy, and a bunch of other things that we're trying to make the world a better place. And if you look at water management, approximately 80% of municipal water processing and distribution costs are for electricity. Groundwater supply of water requires about 30% more electricity than surface water supplies. And as our surface water is getting stressed and we all start moving to groundwater, means higher energy costs. And competition for water is definitely increasing. I don't know if you've heard about the situation that happened in the Nicola here in this September, where they actually went out and shut a ranch down for using water just so there was enough water for the fish to come up the stream to be able to spawn. So we're now, this is the first time this has ever happened, we're starting to get into this big time competition for water. So is it food, is it fish? In this case it was fish, and the rancher got shut down. So quickly, I'll go through some of these fairly quickly, and if you want more information, you can go to the websites to find out more about them. The water balance model is on the web at waterbalance.ca, and I recognize now that in my presentation here I don't have the website on any of my slides, so I'll tell you what it is. It's waterbalance.ca. You can go to the web and use this tool. It is free for all users, but if you want to keep your scenarios and all that, there is a charge for those that use the model high end. What this tool does is really about how we develop our land. And you can drive around and see all these developments going in where you see more impervious areas, rooftops, pavements, sidewalks, driveways. So what's happening is, and you'll see as I go through this tool a little bit here, is that we're getting more and more water running off the site, going into our streams, eroding the streams, going out into the ocean. And what happens in the summertime is that our streams are not replenished. We don't have the groundwater flow that's feeding the streams, so therefore we have less flow in July and August when we really want it. And so this is a tool that kind of assesses how well we're doing these developments. Just about the last 2 years, I guess, this tool, we had the tool running since about 2003, 2004. But, and now it's extended to across Canada. Alberta's coming as a partner. One of the things Alberta wanted was, they said, well, we're really into Qualhimo. We want to have Qualhimo as sort of our tool. So we actually revamped the entire water balance model to have Qualhimo as the engine. So it gives the same results as Qualhimo does, but it does it in a much easier interface than what a Qualhimo user would do. And we've heard people sort of say, well, if I use Qualhimo and I want to do a scenario, it takes me 3-4 hours or the better part of a day. I can do the same thing in the water balance model in about 5 or 10 minutes if I have my scenario development. So it's fast, it's user-friendly, it's meant to be used for on-the-ground people, not necessarily high-end users, although engineers can use it as well. What the water balance model now does, it sort of starts linking land development, what's happening on the ground, to what's happening to the stream. What you do on your site is going to dictate what happens to the stream. And so we're developing these modules like a tree canopy module, stream erosion index, and things like that are being built into the water balance model. One of the key things that many people don't realize is that it's how water moves through the soil. And that's what the water balance model tries to determine when it does its assessment. And this is Richard Bose from North Vancouver. He's one of our partners in the water balance model, doing a demonstration in one of our workshops. And one of the key things here is, if you have topsoil, if you have absorbent landscapes, we can capture these small rainfall events, slowly release them back to groundwater instead of having them run off. And of course, if we do that, and we actually have the deep topsoil, we also then conserve water in the summertime, because deep topsoil, you have deeper rooted lawns, you don't have to water them as often, helps us on both sides of the spectrum, helps us in the wintertime, helps us in the summertime as well. So, how land is developed determines, how we're going to use our water, the sustainability of supply, how water runs off the land. And how often do you see a development go in? And this really happens a lot in the Okanagan especially, where they strip the topsoil off, the house goes in, they lay the turf down, they water it, looks nice and green, the homeowner buys it, and boy, is he happy. Until the following year when he starts to realize, my lawn needs a lot of water, it doesn't have any root zone, and you're forever fighting the weeds and all those other kind of things. You don't see that in the first month or two. It comes up a year or so later. Lawn looks great when you first put the turf down, but is it sustainable over the long term? So here's a development back in the 1950s, and what I want you to sort of see is 19% hard surfaces, 50% landscaping, 53% in tree canopy, 13% building footprint. We move ahead to the 1990s, we get a bigger building footprint, less tree canopy, a little bit more landscaping, definitely more hard surfaces. And so the way we're developing our land is having a big impact on how we our impact on our streams and healthy streams, all of that. What the model does is gives you an output to see how well you're doing. You can see with the arrows here that the second one over tells us what the runoff from the site would be based on a 1950 development. The high one in the middle is the runoff from the site based on our 1990 development, so we're getting much more runoff from the amount of rainfall that's falling on the site. But if we implement a bunch of source controls, the model gives an answer as to, okay, if you do all these things, you can actually reduce your runoff back to 1950 levels or even less. And the beauty of this tool is that you can actually run various scenarios and put in different source controls to reach whatever target you're trying to get at. So it's a really neat tool for municipalities to work with developers to sort of say, okay, if you're going to do this development, here's the target we want you to reach. And a way to assess that development, your development, is to go into the water balance model, put in your source controls, demonstrate to us that it's going to work. If it doesn't quite work, we want you to go further. And it's a way of assessing and giving approval to development before it even gets started. A good example of that would be in Courtney, where Home Depot was going in and the farmers downstream were sort of saying, we don't want this Home Depot, we're going to have all this runoff coming off, it's going to flood our lands and all these problems. So Courtney made Home Depot run the water balance model, demonstrate what kind of source controls they're going to put in. They did all of that, farmers downstream of their land. It's been fine. So there's just an example of how it can work. Okay, moving on to our next tool. I'm not going to read the quote here from Glenn Brown. You can read it yourself. But what Glenn's really saying here is that we have less dollars, we need to do more things. If local governments are going to come to the province for dollars, and you want to get resources to do things, you're going to have to do things the right way. You're going to have to demonstrate to us that you've got good developments, that you've got good infrastructure going in, that water conservation's high on your priority list. That's the message he's really giving here. So, and I don't know too much about this tool because I wasn't involved with the development, but they've developed a water conservation calculator, and I can see that down the road, now this calculator was supposed to have been live as of last night, and I went to the site and it just says coming soon, so it's not quite there yet. But it's supposed to be there very quickly. And this calculator that's been developed by community development is they will start telling municipalities, you need to use this tool, show to us that you're doing the right thing before you get your grant. I can see it being linked to grants down the road. So just, it's a web-based tool, it's a decision support tool. Some of the inputs to run this calculator are things like population data, water supply, capacity data, annual water demands, daily demands. Some of the outcomes are demand, supply, population profiles and forecasts, residential ICI conservation scenarios, financing planning, and so on. And it has a decision-making component where, based on some of the demand-side solutions and supply-side solutions and growth predictions, the calculator will chart variables against each other so you can sort of see if this happens, then this is what's going to happen, and so on and so forth. So the tool will illustrate how specific conservation measures yield both fiscal and physical water consumption savings. And I think that's why they're going to want you to run this tool before you apply for a grant. So if you're going to get this money, this is what we can get. The tool will help you answer some of those questions that they're going to ask. It assists in developing a water conservation plan and assessing water infrastructure projects. So it's there to help local governments in their decision making around their infrastructure and assist in targeting conservation efforts and therefore becoming more cost effective. It really works well for small communities, and those are usually the communities that don't have the resources to do all the things to answer the questions to get the grants. So this tool is really specifically kind of targeted for that, but I think larger communities can use it as well.